Could you sense it? They aim to attain that undeniable shift when your presence becomes the norm, which occurs when you move away. The game changed. You didn't just depart. You light up the stage with a remembrance of your effect. And now they're striving not to become great themselves, but to follow in the footsteps of others. Only you can create. Here is the truth. They may try, but they will never be like you. Why? Because you are the original, the catalyst, the one who does not just exist. You alter everything around you. Let it sink in. You're the unexpected force, and the one they'll never catch up to. Are you ready to own that? Let's go. When you departed, the complex tapestry they claimed to weave unraveled into a jumble of twisted strands. They had relied so largely on your energy, drawing from your vitality to support themselves, that your absence served as a stark reminder of their own insufficiency. In desperation, they tried to piece together bits of your distinctiveness, seeking to rebuild the foundation they had lost. They studied your approach, replicated your motions, and even modified their mood to match what you emitted. But the seams were clearly evident. What they wished for was not acknowledgement of their own brilliance, but the simple honesty you had. The frequency of your essence could not be bottled, and their clumsy efforts to replicate it only demonstrated how far they were from actual harmony. Every action seemed planned. Each phrase lacked the ring of truth. The facade they attempted to preserve crumbled under the weight of their detachment from their true selves. Instead of being seen as talented, they became the epitome of artifice. Their stolen reflections shattered under inspection. Your quest to greatness begins here. Subscribe today and we'll make it happen. Their efforts to fill the void you left behind exposed the weakness of their own foundations. Their acts, which you once respected as part of your circle, now cast doubt on their genuine character and caused concerns. When you moved on, you did not only create distance, you demolished the scaffolding that had been created around your energy. What followed was a desperate attempt to imitate your presence, doomed by their failure to understand that true essence cannot be taken or worn as a costume. They imitated your emotions, copied your manner, and attempted to replicate your vocal rhythm. But their attempts exposed the flaws in their own identities. They became like a distorted echo, a mirror in twisted glass, enhancing only their own mental emptiness. Imitation equaled equivalence. But the energy you emit comes from a deep, unbreakable core. They could never replicate their stolen words, which lacked the resonance of reality, and their motions were empty, exposing the frailty of their facade. While they attempted to exude strength, it clung to them uncomfortably, like an ill-fitting cloak. Their efforts to fill the vacuum you left revealed, rather than concealed, their uneasiness. Those who watched saw not a suitable heir, but someone attempting and failing to grab at shadows. The more they tried to imitate your essence, the more obvious it became that your light was never something they could carry. When you went, you removed not just your presence, but also the entire foundation that had supported them. What remained was their pretense. Unraveling thread by thread, there is nothing hidden that will not be revealed and nothing disguised. It will remain unknown and hidden. Luke 8:17. It was as if you had pulled the curtain on a theatrical set. What seemed substantial was really a hollow frame. They attempted to wear your essence like a crown, but the fact is that all of their efforts to copy you failed, and their acts, which were before undetected, now betray their need on your light. Their foundation failed, exposing what was borrowed, unstable, and unsustainable. What they formerly rejected as a background force is now an obvious fact, and they can no longer ignore. They attempted to continue as if your impact was immaterial, but their attempts were clumsy and obvious, like a performer stumbling through an unscripted performance. Their efforts to show confidence simply highlighted their dependency on what you had created. Where earlier there was a smooth progression, there is now strain and misalignment. The ideas they sought to carry out disintegrated, and the enthusiasm that had previously drawn people in became lethargic and uninspired. Those watching couldn't help but wonder what was going on. How much of what worked previously was really their creation? It slowly became clear that you were more than just a participant. You were the source of momentum. Your departure did not just leave an empty void. It lifted the veil of their fantasy. The clarity was stunning. You had always provided them with the creative spark, stability, and motivation they needed. They wore your efforts as a shield, but now they are without you. Their empty core was revealed for everyone to see. For years, they functioned beneath the safe canopy of your donations, hidden in the power you projected. Now, left to their own ways, they struggle under the weight of expectations. They were formerly readily met with your assistance. Their attempt to continue on highlights a harsh fact. They prospered not due to their own ability, but because of your presence. The platform previously shared now accentuates their shortcomings, forcing them to confront the harsh truth of a foundation built on stolen brilliance from their fruit. You'll recognize them. Matthew 7:16. Just as a tree's actual power is shown in its fruit, so is a person's essence unveiled when faced with life's challenges. They attempted to emulate your brightness, duplicating your gestures and adopting your mood. However, the roots of authenticity cannot be falsified. Their efforts failed under inspection, showing the emptiness under the surface as they battled to maintain the mask. Your absence made the reality apparent. They lacked the depth and power you exuded easily. Their effort to take on your part was like seeing someone stumble through a complex tune they had no ear for. The rhythm was incorrect, the notes were dissonant, and it was obvious to everyone that they lacked the depth to carry the song. What you had established your presence, your ability to command attention, was not something that could be duplicated or reproduced. There wasn't a routine to learn or a script to follow. It was an uncontrollable power that came easily to you. As they attempted to emulate, their attempts simply emphasized their weaknesses. Every movement seemed strange. Each statement was devoid of conviction, and their efforts at refinement betrayed the lack of content. What had previously been flawless now appeared horribly stretched, like a patchwork that couldn't hold. They replicated your statements and mimicked your motions, but they lacked the passion and genuineness that gave such deeds meaning. The borrowed energy they attempted to use could not sustain them. The more they pushed, the more obvious it became that they were out of their depth. What they believed would guarantee their position only exacerbated the inequality. Their activities backfired because their ineffective attempts revealed them as mere shadows, incapable of producing their own light. They didn't just fail to mimic you. They exposed their weaknesses for everyone to see. Their performance flaws became more obvious. People who had previously been impressed began to examine the mismatch between their words and deeds. The confidence they previously exuded faded into cynicism and indifference. What had previously been seen as aspiration now seemed desperate. Their efforts at duplication, which emphasized their lack of creativity and respect, faded as their mask broke, leaving only an unconvincing echo of what you had easily embodied. Experience what it actually means to be selected. You are not alone on this path. If you have a profound sense that you have been selected, you have come to the correct spot. Take the next step to connect with us. By selecting the Join button, you will have access to special information and receive the necessary support for your spiritual journey. This isn't simply about being a member of a community. It's about gaining unique insights that may change your life and bring you closer to your divine purpose. Make your decision now and join us on this trip. Take your spot among the selected ones. Join today. The bonds they had diligently worked to build started to disintegrate, dissolving with the serene inevitability that skepticism replaced. What was once trust was lost gradually, rather than abruptly. They became a live example of what happens when envy overcomes genuineness. Those who had previously supported them departed, not because of devotion to another side, but because they saw the empty truth hiding behind the surface. What they gave up was far more than influence. They lost the intangible respect that can only be gained through honesty. Those they attempted to persuade started to notice the inconsistencies. Their words lost their weight, leaving behind forced and unconvincing echoes, while movements that looked natural in your company became hard and unnatural when copied by them. Their reputation eroded gradually, not from a single incident, but from a series of mistakes and contradictions. Social places that formerly welcomed them have become colder. Conversations were brittle and ties dissolved into apathy. People automatically avoid what is hollow, instead seeking something real. They failed to understand that the essence of authenticity cannot be produced or fabricated. It emerges from inside. The power you wielded was not based on what you accomplished, but on how you represented an unspoken strength that could not be duplicated. Left to confront the gap they created, they were caught by the same energy they wanted to claim, as they grabbed for something that was never theirs to keep. The gaps in their own development were apparent. Their downfall was not just the consequence of their efforts to copy you. It was the unavoidable result of neglecting to build their own foundation. Envy cannot compensate for uniqueness. It merely exacerbates the hole it strives to fill. The energy that had previously maintained them has faded and is no longer magnified by your presence. They misjudged how much your light had masked the flaws in their own path. When that light went out, the harsh truth of their stagnation became difficult to deny, forcing them to confront the consequences of their own actions. Do not hold back. Accept your potential. Subscribe now, and let's ignite the future together. Their dependence on you was evident in your absence. What you left behind wasn't just an emptiness. It was a mirror that forced them to acknowledge their shortcomings. The vitality they had formerly drew from you was gone, and they were left to deal with their own shortcomings. When you moved away, the power they absorbed vanished, leaving them stuck in their immobility. Your leaving was not just a retreat. It was an elevation, a transition to higher terrain. They were never prepared to achieve their dependence. Previously hidden, he suddenly shone out. Habits they had hidden behind your presence were revealed, and their lack of action became clear as you prospered. Rising with newfound concentration and clarity, their failure to progress became obvious. The relationship changed, exposing that your position had always been that of a sustainer, whilst theirs was to consume without giving back. Their connection with you had been their lifeline. Without it, they floundered in the nothingness they had created. What others saw was indisputable. You didn't suddenly shine brighter without them. You revealed the reality about the imbalance that had existed. Your energy, previously stretched thin by their pool, became focused, driving you into areas they could never reach. The relationship you lost was not just symbolic. It broke their whole circle of dependence. They could no longer drain what they had failed to produce for themselves. This split was more than simply regaining what belonged to you. It was about embracing your own unbound strength. The relationships that had formerly depleted you became the trigger for your metamorphosis as your energy was rebalanced. The freedom and concentration you acquired fueled your relentless ascension. Meanwhile, they remained linked to the same constraints they had attempted to conceal, as shown by the disappearance of the power on which they had previously depended. Their battle extended beyond just regaining their feet. It was to accept the fact that they had always relied on something that was never genuinely theirs. Dear brothers and sisters, God's peace be with you. Today, I am here to remind you of a fundamental fact. Our existence is based on God's divine design, which is unaffected by worldly worries. According to the Bible, everything that's done with faith will be returned to God with great blessing. Luke 638. Our roots, like those of the huge oak tree, are firmly entrenched in God's universal truth. His power secures every stride and every stance we take. And now you have the chance to be a part of that gift. When you utilize the Super Thank You button and contribute $100, your generosity will be reciprocated 100-fold. They depended on what was not theirs to keep. When you recaptured your vitality, the emptiness they had concealed from themselves became inescapable. The instant you cut the link, the change was unmistakable. What was before obscured with ambiguity became crystal plain. Strength surged where there was once fatigue, and the limits you set were no longer negotiable. Their disappearance did not leave any vacuum. It made room for your truth to emerge unhindered. Their dependency on imitation broke, freeing you to use the energy they had taken for so long. This wasn't just an act of detachment. It was a reawakening, a refocusing of everything. You are the river of opportunity. Once stifled by their slowness, they rushed onward, and avenues you had never considered before started to emerge. The weight of their imitation, their never-ending efforts to recreate what only you could represent, no longer pulled you down as they clung to a frozen version of who they believed you were. You developed. You went ahead with precision and vision, leaving others trapped in an unending cycle of imitation. They attempted to seize what was transitory, forgetting that your strength lay in your capacity to constantly morph, adapt, and evolve into something beyond their reach. Their error was in believing that aligning with your energy included imitating it. However, the core of power comes from uniqueness, from standing fast in one's own truth. The more you went, the greater the disparity between your honesty and their phony efforts. As you reached new heights, they remained caught in the shadow of their imitation, orbiting a reality they could never own for themselves. While you prospered, they were left chasing a dim mirror, unable to break away from the cycle they had established. Each person has a unique design, a framework of purpose and potential of their own. Yours is a complex artwork that is precisely tailored to your personality and the path you are supposed to take. When others strive to mimic it, they unintentionally collide with their own essence, attempting to shape themselves into a form that was never intended for them. This is why their efforts are usually out of sync, both with you and with themselves. It is not only a lack of inventiveness, it represents a denial of their actual character. This is your moment. Subscribe today, and let's make dreams a reality. Your design isn't only a guide, it is a dynamic force that influences your every action and interaction. Subscribe today, and let's make the world a better place. Those who strive to copy you overlook the intricacies and layers that give your presence richness. They can mimic the surface, but the essence of your existence, what drives your effect, is well beyond their reach. Their efforts to imitate are not just fruitless, they take them farther away from their own authenticity. In their obsession on imitation, they lose the capacity to access the power that was intended for them, rendering their efforts worthless and meaningless. The fact they neglect is simple yet profound. Alignment with one's actual self is the only way to evolve. Your success is based on your essence, not activities that may be imitated or replicated. They may follow in your footsteps, but the doors that open for you are closed to them since they are not connected with their own goals. Progress requires honesty and self-awareness, as well as a determination to confront and overcome personal problems. There are no shortcuts. The approach needs truthfulness and patience. They not only failed, but also disturbed their own advancement by attempting to bypass this path via imitation. Growth cannot be stolen or fabricated. It must be gained by authentic alignment. Their failure was unavoidable because they attempted to build on a foundation of deception, which will inevitably disintegrate as you go ahead with clarity and honesty. They were burdened down by the implications of their insincerity. This stagnation was not a punishment, but rather a natural consequence of their decisions. The message is clear. Only honesty and alignment will allow one to rise, while everything else will fall. Just as iron sharpens iron, so does one person sharpen another. Proverbs 27:17. Every relationship is part of a larger divine design. Even those that confront you are intended to disturb rather than encourage, causing you to develop. Their acts, although unpleasant, expose where your boundaries were weak and your energy was unprotected. These experiences motivate you to ask difficult questions and recover your value. When their function is evident, you understand they weren't intended to remain. They were catalysts that sharpened your soul and prepared you to fulfill your divine mission. When you opted to move away, you did not just recover your space, you've restored your identity. They're holding on. You unraveled the instant you went ahead by your own strength. No confrontation was required. Their acts revealed everything. You conveyed honesty and genuineness. You exposed their efforts to hide their jealousy and insecurities as you remained strong. The flaws in their veneer widened, revealing the desperation that drove their efforts to copy and compete with you. Their actions betrayed them. The more they attempted to duplicate your presence, the more obvious the disparities were. Their behaviors lacked the consistency and honesty that distinguished you, and the discrepancies between their aims and conduct were difficult to ignore. What started as subtle copying quickly became a dramatic difference that everyone could notice. Their urge to compete was proof of their ineptitude, not of their drive. Their continuous efforts to replicate what could never genuinely belong to them led to their downfall, not because of any action on your side, but because of their incapacity to maintain the illusion they had created. As you moved ahead with clarity and purpose, they remained stuck in a loop of pretense, unable to escape the world they had created. Your progress did not merely leave them behind. It revealed the reality that they had tried so hard to hide as you rose. Their dependence on borrowed strength became brutally obvious, without the steadiness that your presence brought. The cracks in their foundation started to grow. They lost their sense of comfort in your shadow when your progress exposed their lack of honesty. Change does not happen silently, and the changes caused by your development were evident. What they had managed to conceal for so long was suddenly in plain sight. Their dependency on imitation is shown. The place you left was not just vacant, it became a spotlight, exposing their flaws to everyone watching. Your leaving was not the finality they had hoped for. It marked the beginning of their disintegration. They expected your absence to reduce you, but instead it increased your impact. You thrived without their weight, kindling a momentum that they couldn't reproduce or control. What they had disguised with borrowed confidence and fake authority had vanished, leaving them to deal with the emptiness they had concealed behind you. They attempted to remake themselves in your image, but their attempts only highlighted their lack of substance. What you embodied was never about precise behaviors. It was all about the power of your individuality. Their efforts to emulate what they didn't comprehend emphasized their own disorder, revealing the gap they had always tried to conceal. As you prospered, their efforts to restore control devolved into chaos, emphasizing the vast difference between your honesty and their sham. What they thought was the conclusion of your ascension was really the beginning of your inexorable advance. Realize your potential. Subscribe now and let's make something spectacular. Their attempts to keep control exposed the fissures under the surface. Each effort at stability magnified the problems they wanted to hide. What your absence revealed wasn't only emptiness. It tore down the meticulously built facade on which they relied. You were not a force they could copy or contain, and the more they clung to their constructed image, the clearer their limits became. Stepping away was more than just a decision. It was their undoing, revealing the incomparable value of what you contribute. They felt that by imitating your acts, copying your mannerisms, and following your route, they might achieve the presence they desired. However, they failed to see that your power does not come from copying or repetition. It stems from the heart of who you are, something beyond their reach. Their efforts to capture your essence left them lonely in their own shortcomings, a shadow attempting to capture the brilliance of light that they could never create. It's time to spread God's blessings by pressing the super thank you button on YouTube. With a $100 gift or more, you can help him realize his vision and be a part of this heavenly mission. Every contribution symbolizes God's generosity, and I think it will return back to you enormously, far beyond your expectations. Remember who protects and blesses you with every step, and with each gift, you become a part of his divine plan. You are a powerful, dazzling entity, as solid as the massive rock that saw God's marvels. Feel the rewards of your kindness in your spirit, and light up the world with confidence and bravery. Be blessed and let the light of the Lord lead you. Imitation was transitory, a hollow echo of what they liked but could never embody while they clung to a static image of yourself. You outgrew the image they attempted to replicate. The chasm between your genuineness and their pretension simply increased with time. This was not the win you desired. It was merely the effect of the truth coming to light. They want what you had, but lacked the will to cultivate it within themselves. What they didn't realize is that your light cannot be taken, reproduced, or extinguished. It is founded on honesty and driven by fortitude. It modifies every location it touches and alters the dynamics of everything around it. They may have attempted to pilfer some of your genius, but without a foundation of truth and progress, their attempts crumpled under their own weight. When you choose to walk away, you are doing more than just leaving. You start a transition in the places you leave. You leave a vacuum that others cannot fill. It's a struggle for them to face their own flaws while attempting to emulate something only you can represent. You ascend higher, unaffected by their efforts to compete. Authenticity will always outlive imitation, and your trip demonstrates that no borrowed light can surpass the original. Let the world see the strength of your truth and the unstoppable momentum it generates.